Hey everybody, welcome back to the Comic-Con Podcast, episode 24. We are recording this on June 17th, 2021. Shout out to everyone in the community listening to this podcast, whether it's on Apple, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Anchor FM. I am one of your co-hosts for the evening, Justin, aka Nemesis Prime, and throwing it all the way to my buddy Zack. What is going on, Zack?
What's up, everybody? This is Zack, aka the Manimal, down here in El Paso, Texas. Just ready to talk comics, avoid that heat, and we got some good stuff today. Pretty excited about today.
Yes, we do. So we actually have two guests. First time we've actually had two guests here on the show. We actually have a publisher and as well as an artist here in New Jersey. So we have Sinopa Publishing, Sam Quinton. Say hello to everyone, Sam.
How are you, everyone? It's good to be here.
Hey. And we have Alexia Veldhuisen out of New Jersey, a local for me. What's going on, Alexia?
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we want a little bit of a background. I met both Alexia and Sam at the Garden State Comic Fest a couple of weeks ago here in New Jersey. Typically the show is in Morristown, New Jersey, but because of COVID, they had some restrictions and they changed the location to Elizabeth, New Jersey. So they had it in an old 21st century store. That's kind of like what they've been doing here in New Jersey. They've had two shows in different malls, one in Rockaway, New Jersey, and one in Elizabeth, New Jersey. So and I was walking around on Friday afternoon. One of the first booths that wasn't comics, cards, or Funko Pops was Sam's booth and his publishing company. And, I was looking at all this stuff because, of course, I'm a big artist and I like to get to know a lot of the indie stuff that's going on. And I met Sam and, Alexia was there as well. They were talking a lot about the publishing company as well as their new title called 47 Furious Tales. But let's kind of get into a little bit of background of Sam and let's hear a little bit about Sinopa. So Sam, tell us a little bit about Sinopa Publishing. When did you start it, and what else do you have going on other than the main title, 47 Furious Tales?
Sure thing. I founded Sinopa Publishing in 2017 to start publishing role-playing game material and hope to move into comics as we gained a little bit of traction. We started with our first release, which was Tale of the Wizard's Eye, a D&D open game license adventure, and then proceeded into other adventures with the introduction of the Tarot Adventure series, which is an ongoing series of adventures. We just pushed out the digital rewards to our Kickstarter backers for that campaign. We'll be shipping the print copies to them once the books come in from the printer. We also put out a couple of larger source books, specifically The Steel Road, which was a collaboration between myself and artist Zachary Viola. So it produced like a sketchbook style source book for weapons that we had a really great time with, and actually sees a lot of use in the stores who are carrying our stuff. And then after that, a little nefarious book that we put out, written by myself and illustrated by Christian Martinez, titled Whispers of Persephone, which is the first and so far only book that I've released that's been banned in an entire country. So it got banned in the Middle Eastern country for sorcery, and that was pretty much that. But it's a book about necromancy. It's fairly graphic. We don't recommend it for anyone who's under the age of 18. And it's designed to bring real gritty, bloody necromancy into people's 5e campaigns.
That's awesome. That's quite the feather to have in your cap, to be banned out of not just a country, but you said the Middle East in general. I mean, that's
it's one very specific Middle Eastern country.
Gotcha.
So we'll just let that float for now. But our Kickstarter backer from that country is how we found out it got banned. When we shipped it to him, he had to pay a fine of $1,000.
Oh man!
Wow.
But apparently they still let him keep his banned book. So I don't know how banned that is, but you can imagine not a lot of people want to pay $1,000 fine for a D&D book.
Now, did he actually have to show you that fine? Like, did he? Was he complaining?
No, he just sent me a email with it. He's like, "Look at what they made me do."
Okay.
And of course, it was written in Arabic or whatever the local language is, and I don't read it, so
okay.
I had to try to trust what he was telling me in English. But it was pretty wild to see. Then we also put out the Sinopa Omnibus, which are quarterly collections of creatures, non-player characters, and stories. Those have original art in them to illustrate those specific character types. We had to suspend that when the COVID outbreak happened in 2020, but we're hoping to bring volume 3 rather of the omnibus out probably next month, which is the first one that was wholly illustrated by only one artist. Normally they're a collaboration of multiple artists who contribute on that, but volume 3 was done entirely by Alexia Veldhuisen. So we kept her extraordinarily busy for that one. And of course, she's also been working on 47 Furious Tales, which is our telling of the 47 Ronin story straight out of the pages of Japanese history. But we're telling it with anthropomorphic animals. So we've got squirrels and foxes, rabbits, and a variety of other anthropomorphic animals, much like they do in Yosagi Yojimbo or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And Alexia has done a fantastic job of illustrating that in wonderful color.
Yeah, I was really excited to check that out because I'm a big fan of samurai stuff, whether it's anime. I grew up watching tons of anime. I love any type of action video game or movies. And when I saw the 47 Furious Tales and you said, oh, it's all about the 47 Ronin, I was like, this is awesome. And even the way the printing, you printed on not normal like comic paper, right? It's on a different paperback, right?
Right, exactly. We use an 80-pound interior paper and a 130-pound cardstock cover. So it's a really heavy-duty print volume. Each issue is on that same stock. The covers are finished with this satin soft touch finish, so it has really a very... I guess the best way to describe it is a very comfortable feeling to it in your hand.
Sexy.
Sexy is a good word. Sexy is a good
That's
word.
definitely a better descriptor.
It's a really interesting thing too. We find that most of the time when we're out at cons and we put the book in someone's hand so they can look at it, about 95% of people buy it right then, just because it is such a high quality product. And the funny part is that we're able to put that in folks' hands for only $5. So we're right in line with what your normal comic book shelf pricing is for more premium items. And as an indie publisher, that's nice to be able to say.
Yeah. When Justin was when he got back from the con, he was talking to me about everything. I think he probably called me at the con and told me how he met you guys. Like, hey, this title, and he described 47 Tales. And I was like, man, because I'm a big TMNT fan. Like, I'm currently reading that run. It's one of my favorite titles that comes out monthly or whatever. But I'm also a massive Redwall, Brian Jacques fan. So, and this is like right up my alley. It made me feel, when I was reading the first 2 issues, it was very much like Mossflower, Redwall type scenario, but in Japan, and obviously following like the 47 Ronin.
Right.
It's awesome. I really, really enjoyed it.
I'm glad to hear you guys are enjoying it. We're really proud of how the book's turning out.
And now, so the first 2 issues came out. They are available and still available. If anybody wants to purchase them, where can they purchase them directly from?
They can get the digital versions directly through Drive-Thru Comics and Drive-Thru RPG. We have direct sales through our PayPal front right now because we haven't finished building out the website, and that's probably not going to be till early part of next year before we're ready to push that. But we also have issues 1 and 2 are available in demand on Indiegogo at a really comfortable price point. You'll find that basically matches what we were doing at the convention plus the shipping cost.
Yeah, and I think I checked it out. You have, I think it was like $9 or $10, which is super cheap. Which is basically like you said, it's just the cover price plus shipping. There's all different covers. There's covers that are done by Alexia. There's some varying covers, which are pretty cool as well. Now, when is issue 3 going to start the Kickstarter? What are we looking at for?
We are anticipating launching the Kickstarter on October 1st. And the reason I say it that way is we are aiming to have the entirety of the book done by the time we launch. So right now, it looks like if we continue on schedule, Alexia should be done by the end of September. And then that will go ahead and launch in October and then immediately fulfill in November.
Okay, awesome. Alexia, let's get to know a little bit about you as an artist. You're actually our first artist we've had on here. We have a lot of guests typically in the comic book community. You're a current New Jersey native like myself. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are some of your inspiring artists that you like?
Well, for starters, I'm not actually a Jersey native.
Okay.
As the name Veldhuisen would imply, I'm actually from the Netherlands.
Okay.
Yeah. I came over here in 2011 to attend the Kubert School out here in Dover, New Jersey. because I thought, I had the delusions of grandeur of becoming a comic book artist, and there's this comic book school out here. So, I was lucky that I have family who lives here.
Mhm.
So I basically had a green card my whole life. I just never really used it until I was attending the school. So that was I was very fortunate having that. And I graduated in 2014, and I started working with Sam and Sinopa Publishing in 2017. Just to give a very quick recap.
Mhm.
As for the people that inspire me, I mean, gosh, the list is, it's huge. But to give a very prominent example, Danger Girl by J. Scott Campbell is what got me into comics to begin with.
Okay.
And I tell him that. I come by his booth every year at New York Comic Con and be like, hey, I'm back. He's great, though. He's fantastic. Other than that, I'd say one of my biggest inspirations is the character and the mech concept artist for the Metal Gear Solid series, Yoji Shinkawa. I really try to channel his artistry, especially in 47 Furious Tales. Another guy that I look up to is Matteo Scalera. He was kind enough to give me some of his time a long time ago at New York Comic Con, and he just told me these very magical words: "Don't be afraid of the ink. Don't be afraid of the brush." And that kind of helped, I don't know, unlock my inking abilities, if you want to call it that. It definitely made me more comfortable inking with brush, because that's what I usually use predominantly, is brush and ink and ink wash. So diluting the ink with water to create gray tones, which is how I ink 47 Furious Tales and a lot of my other work, if it's not completely digital. And other people that I look up to, I mean, it's a lot of the great artists that have worked with Rick Remender. So, Wes Craig, Sean Murphy, Jerome Pena, Bengal. They're all just amazing artists. I mean, honestly, like I said, the list is very long.
Oh, they're great artists. I 100% agree. Actually, I think back behind me, I have sketches on my wall. I actually have a Red Hood Jason Todd from Matteo Scalera back there.
Awesome.
So, and now you draw and ink both for 47 Furious Tales, correct?
Correct.
So I want to tell you this, personally for myself. When I read both issues, I can actually see the difference between issue 1 and issue 2. You can actually see an improvement, and it was a difference between when I was reading issue 1, and I can see how you got better with issue 2. And I'm sure as you progress through your career, you're going to change. By the time issue 12 comes out, I feel like it's going to be a completely different project. So I think it's awesome. You've gone to the Q-Bird School, and what's really interesting is this past weekend I was actually up at Dewey's Comics. I'm sure you know about Dewey's Comics and Cards up there.
That's my local shop.
So what's funny is I used to, since in the New Jersey area, I used to go to their other shop when they were in Madison, and then they moved, and me and my friend were coming back from Sparta, New Jersey, up north, and I was like, let's just stop at a comic shop, and we stopped in there. And the girl who was ringing me up after I bought a couple comics actually was, gave me some of the cards for Dungeons and Dames, and also probably, and the 47 Furious Tales. And I was like, oh, actually, I already have these. Give these to somebody else. I was like, because I just got them at the show. And then we got into a conversation. We got into a conversation of how you went there to the Q-Bird School, and then they have their little section of all the comics that any of the artists or writers, artists have come from there. And I was like, oh, do you have any of, did you have that title? And they're like, oh, no, it looks like we're sold out. And I was like, oh, it would have been nice to get it. But Sam was kind enough to give us a copy, so we were able to read it. So I think you're doing a great job on 47 Furious Tales.
Oh, thank you.
And now there's the other thing, I guess, really to go back to Sam, like I said, Dungeons and Dames. Let's talk about that. So that's a Kickstarter right now. It's Dungeons and Dames Fantasy. I got it up, Fantasy TTRP pinup art book. So this just actually launched 2 days ago?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday, a little after, around 5:30 yesterday. Yeah.
So this is awesome because now it's only day 2. So anybody who's listening to this can really get in early if they want to back this project. So let's talk about this for a little bit.
Sure. This project was kind of conceived in the early stages of the coronavirus outbreak in late 2019. We had a lot of indie comic producers who suddenly found themselves that they couldn't get their books out of China, where most of them were printing. We actually print ours in the US, so it doesn't really affect us. But we had a lot of people who were artists and creators who were on other projects who suddenly everything was on hold. You know, they didn't know when their money was going to come in. They didn't know when their books were going to be able to come out. They didn't know when they were going to put it out. And so it occurred to me that we could do something to help some of the artists that we worked with. And so what I did was I pitched this out for a bunch of the artists in the work group that that I maintain on Facebook, where we have basically everyone that we commission art through. And we came up with a really nice, strong pool of artists for that. And so the whole concept was to get this original, neat concept, these fantasy pinups featuring the ladies and female creatures from fantasy role-playing games, like elves and dwarves and pixies and angels and things like that, and bring them into this art book so that we could showcase just all the talent that these folks have. And then also make it something that was profitable for them, because we're actually taking and just equally distributing any thing remaining after the Kickstarter between the artists, and I get an equal share myself as the publisher to help make up for like the legal fees and stuff like that. But sending them the equal division of all the print copies, equal division of any remaining cash to help, kind of help support the artists who were affected so much by the slowdown in work that happened in late 2019 into 2020.
That's really cool, man. I mean, COVID obviously and the pandemic and everything just really affected the comic book community in so many different ways. And you can see it across the board, whether it's like, the price hikes and stuff on books and just the availability of things. But it's been really interesting to hear about, some of the independent writers. Obviously, you got the big two and the minor independent publishers, the big names like Boom Studios and Image and whatnot,
right? Who
those writers are all going to be okay. You know what I mean? But then you think about all these up and coming independent stuff and like being halted, and it's sad. You don't know what maybe got lost on the wayside that people just couldn't fund and keep going with their dream or something and just gave up. So it's time will tell how much the community was really affected by this in the long run. So
one thing that had me worried particularly was how local comic shops were going to be affected.
Right.
And we were able to help out a little bit with that, because we of course had some shops who had been supporting our Kickstarter activities, shops who had been purchasing books from us directly. And so one of the things that we did was we made sure that we were still getting books out. And that was one of the advantages of printing in the United States. We had a lot of books on hand because I print at levels that a lot of folks in my size operation don't. Like issue 2, we printed 1,500 copies of each of the covers. So a 4,500 copy comic order out of an operation the size of Sinopa is probably about an order of magnitude bigger than what you would expect. But what it enabled us to do is to make sure that we were putting books into stores who needed stuff to sell. And putting them in there at the same price point we were able to before COVID hit, which made a lot of difference. We had Alexia and I went to one store in person here earlier this year, and they were talking about how it was really helpful that we were able to not just bring our books in, but other creators who I know we sat and pointed them to them and say, hey, if you can get the books in at this kind of price point, then that can really help you out, can really help them out. And they started carrying a lot of indie books, particularly when Marvel and DC weren't shipping materials at all. And so even though they were selling things, by mail, it gave them new titles, exciting titles, stuff to get out and put into people's hands and help keep generating revenue. And I'm personally really, really very happy with that. These guys are hardworking. Your local comic shops need your support, and being able to help facilitate that was one of my prouder moments during 2020.
If I can add to that, we at Sinopa strongly believe in supporting local comic shops. They are the lifeline to the industry. When Diamond stopped distributing, it just halted everything down to
Mhm.
a grind, and
Mhm.
it was just terrible, really, for everybody involved. So, however we can support the retailers, we try. Because it's a give and take kind of community.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. It's interesting, as we get further on 2021, 2022, and comic books still have been this medium that has kind of, balked against like adapting to industry, really, and like technology. Right. Obviously, a lot of people read comics online, but it's just not the same thing. I mean, you look at like stores, obviously like Barnes and Noble succeeds, but if you guys remember Borders or any of the bookstores, all that stuff like closing down, the print media, it's going kind of away, and comics kind of sit there, and there still are this physical form of, literature that we enjoy. So if we don't support the comic book stores, I mean, that's where it all dies, is right there. So
yeah, the brick and mortars is really the place to be. Zack and I know a lot of shops during COVID. They did a lot of YouTube auctions, online sales, wherever they could. Just obviously not new books were coming out. So if you wanted to read something maybe old, I was telling people just call up your shop. I was giving people ideas for trade paperbacks, and even like you guys are doing, just going in and giving them independent stuff, which is something that starts that fire for someone who maybe is a possible new reader, and kind of back to Dungeons and Dames. So it kind of just kickstarted 2 days ago, like you said. I actually just did my pledge this week, today. And it's really interesting. So it's a lot of pinups of different stuff like elves and dwarves and, in very sexy, very different characters. And recently Zack and I were talking about, and we're both big Skyrim fans, and we were talking about Elder Scrolls Online, possibly getting into it, and me and him doing a team of role-playing games. So these characters look and are very similar to something that you would see in a game like that. What kind of, Sam, do you play any type of role-playing games, or what kind of got you into? Oh, Alexia is laughing. I'm afraid to ask that question now.
I'm a terrible role-playing nerd. I play a lot of D&D, a lot of Talislanta. Talislanta is probably my favorite all-time role-playing game, all tabletop. And Shadowrun are my big three. As far as computer games, I played a little ESO with my brother for a little while. He has been a diehard ESO fan since release. Plays pretty much every day since release, and so I just can't keep up. But I do play a lot of Warframe with my buddies, which is pretty beast mind kind of mode. You're just like, point shoot, jump out of the way.
Yeah.
And then, hey, we finished mission. Let's get a beer and let's do this again. And it's kind of where I'm at with my online gaming. But I'll tell you, the more they tease out the next Elder Scrolls, we just see a couple of images every couple of years. And I'm like, well, come on, give us a little bit more. I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with that. I hope it has more of a Morrowind vibe than is what I'm hoping
the old school Morrowind. Man.
Yeah, with the up to date graphics. Maybe multiplayer mode with a little customization efforts. That's what I'm hoping for. But I'm not gonna hold my breath. But
they just did Blackwood, I know, expansion for ESO.
Yeah.
So, and I heard it got decent reviews. It kind of, a lot of the story kind of brings it back to the old Morrowind times. So we're considering playing it, but Dungeons and Dames is perfect as an art pinup book with all the different types of characters. And who are some of the artists that are on this pinup book?
Oh, we have some wonderful people on this. Of course, we have Alexia Veldhuisen, who is I try to keep Alexia working as much as possible.
I think he's just scared that I'm going to like run off to somebody else or something. He's just like, here, have some more work.
No, of course not. I wouldn't do that. Icicle Sinav, who's a dear friend of Alexia's, who's an artist out of Turkey. She's also doing the cover for my next comic series. I should say my second comic series, which I'm creating with Nick Capone, which is coming out in January, and that's Reign of Ages. And then we've got Greg Harms, who is with Outlaw Studios. He is a co-creator on a number of different projects, and we're just waiting to get in his stuff in color. He finished his pencils and inks months ago, but his colors are still taking a little while. Really looking forward to having those final copies in hand. Kelsey Cohen, who's another Kubert grad, along with Alexia and Aisha. And she did more fanciful pieces with kind of these vibrant colors like you might see in a fantasy anime. And then Lotus Blair, who's a local Kentucky artist who I kind of discovered by accident. She's really wonderful. And in fact, the title card image and image we used for the bulk of the promotion of this project is her creation, her Titan lady sitting there on the rock.
The blue. It's blue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know exactly.
And then Nick Capone, who's a Kubert graduate as well as a Kubert instructor now, and he did one of the demonic images you see on the campaign page. Paul Walcott, another Kubert School graduate, and his work on this has a little bit of an anime manga kind of influence to it. You'll see the piece that we showcased on this was a dark elf that he did. That was really, really something with the shock of white hair and the brief shorts and everything. Just really eye-catching little piece for it. And then we had Rebecca Coulthart, who is a former Kubert student. Rebecca kind of dances to the beat of her own drum and does a lot of things with her own series, which is Cheap Jack Gentleman. But she's done RPG work for me in the past, and she came up with some really interesting, alluring, cartoony style creatures, like her horror fixated mermaid. And then there's, I'll go ahead and tease this out. She's got a zombie girl as one of her other contributions. Really, really interesting.
I really actually like that one a lot. I think it's so funny.
It's
got like a cheeky 50s, pinup style. I mean, feel to it. But it's still Rebecca, and it's still a zombie girl smiling at you.
I know, it's really cool. And then Warren Brown, who is an artist out of Oregon. Warren, actually, I got to know Warren when he became a fan of 47, and I guess more importantly, a fan of Alexia's. But Warren, in his own right, is a fantastic artist. He produces an online comic known as Sig and Joe, which is really a lot of fun. If you haven't checked it out, you really should. But he put out his pieces in this black and white and grayscale. And part of the reason for that is Warren's colorblind. And so he works expressly in that medium so that he can kind of show the world how he sees things in a lot of, gray tones. And I think it was a really, really neat choice for it. And then Zack Viola, who, of course, was co-creator on the Steel Road with me for the Weapon Source book. He came on as well and just delivered some really stunning pieces. We're showcasing his half-dressed dwarf warrior, but he also brought out a really snazzy demon and then a beast girl that I won't get into descriptive for it because we'll just let the image tell the tale on that. And then he also does a lot of military themed illustration. And so his final one, and we're going to spoil this a little bit, is done in the old 1940s style when they would put pinup girls on the side of an aircraft. And so his pinup, the background for it is the side of an aircraft. And so the pinup is actually drawn on the aircraft. It's really interesting way he did that.
Cool. So, and there's going to be how many is on the Dungeons and Dames total of the?
We've got 40 illustrations in total.
Okay.
It's going to be a total of 54 pages because we've got some things like the artist credits in the back and things like that. And then if we hit high enough in our stretch goals, we'll start adding more content on that. Our first stretch goal at 5,000 adds a cool sticker that I had made about 2 years ago, commissioned from Lotus. And then our 10,000 is a surprise. We're not going to reveal that until we actually pass the first stretch goal. And then we've got focused on delivering the highest quality books. So at 25,000, we're going to a hardbound as opposed to softbound. And that's hardbound with sewn pages. So it's literally the best quality book that we can get to deliver to people. And then once we hit that, we'll have stretch goals for adding additional art to it to expand on it. So we want to focus on getting the highest quality book we can to people's hands.
Awesome. So if anybody's out there listening, like Sam said, it's currently on Kickstarter.com under the projects. It's Dungeons and Dames Fantasy TTRPG pinup art book. Dungeons and the end word is ampersand. Dames. It's easy to find. Go ahead and back this project if you're into fantasy and pinups. I know my friend Dave here in New Jersey is a big pinups fan. He's always getting different pinups and from all different artists and putting them up. So I'm sure he'll back this project for some fantasy stuff, especially from all these great local artists and all over the world, really. Warren's really interesting, all the way on Oregon, colorblind artist. But I did see it's almost like a cat looking character.
Yeah, like a cat monk character that's basically practicing and shattering targets.
Yeah.
While basically standing there in the buff, so it's an interesting take, and his other pieces I think are equally fascinating, and he's done some interesting things with his backgrounds as well. I'll tell you that the man has a remarkable talent for drawing snakes. So if you ever see any of that in his background, you're in for a real treat just there alone, not to mention the actual foreground material, I guess we could say. But he's really something. I'm really happy to be working with him.
Awesome. Cool. Zach, you got another question for either Alexia or? Sure.
I do, for Alexia. Hey, so how much of the story for 47 Furious Tales, how much do you require to know when you're writing the panels? Like, how does it come to you? How's like your process with that? Is the story written to you and then you get it and you're kind of instructed? How does it all work? I'm always interested in that.
Well, at the very, very, very beginning of the project, I was vaguely familiar with the story. But for the sake of research, I actually went ahead and watched 2 iterations of movies. One from the 40s and one from the 50s, I believe, to get a better grasp on who's who. Because all these Japanese names in the very beginning are hard to connect the dots in terms of who's connected to the name, connected to the person, who did what, all that stuff, which becomes even more difficult if you didn't have to design them all as squirrels and foxes. So that was the pre-production work, if you will. Then when it came to the actual making of the book, Sam wrote a script. He had written the entire outline of the all 12 issues, because it's a 12-issue miniseries. And we had discussed pacing, which big thing to put in which issue and stuff like that. And then when it comes to the actual script of each issue, he gives me draft number, what is it, 3 for you? But
yeah, usually it's by the time you get it's usually draft 3.
Something like that. And then I go over it again and we discuss things, just like, oh, maybe if we do it more like this, or, oh, I really like this idea. We just we go back and forth. We're very collaborative on the actual book itself. But then once it comes time for me to draw it, that's when Sam kind of lets me, do my thing. I do ask him very specific things like, oh, did you mean to put that in there for a very specific reason, or do you want something to look a specific way? And I will do a heck of a lot of research for that, just to make sure that it looks as good as I can make it look. So that's really it. Like I said, it's a very tight-knit, collaborative effort between the both of us, as I think comics should be.
Right.
I mean, most creator-owned comics, and I'm talking very specifically about Image titles, they tend to be a collaborative effort.
Yeah, you really don't see too many, especially when they start off, that you don't see a writer and artist ever come off that title. And I'm sure, I know your Instagram a little bit of what you're reading, and Zach and I read the same things. We're both big fans of Kieran Gillian. So, him working with Dan Moore on Once and Future. Yeah. And anything else, like you said, Rick Remender and Wes Craig on Deadly Class. You don't ever see another artist come into these titles because they always jive together.
Right.
And Sam and you, Alexi, you're jiving right now on 47 Furious Tales. And when I was reading issue 1, that first action sequence that happens, I was just like, man, that was brutal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
the
I
fun,
mean, hey, it's just it's samurais. It's supposed to
Oh,
be
of
goofy.
course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If there was no blood and gore, it kind of wouldn't be the real thing, right?
Exactly.
Hmm. And
and
we have a
we
long
take
way to go.
we take a lot of inspiration too from Akira Kurosawa films.
Mhm.
So you,
Mhm.
what's really nice about this is a lot of people don't even notice that in the course of these books, there are sometimes 2 whole pages, 3 whole pages where there's literally no dialogue, no narration. It's literally just told through the storyboards, through the panels itself, and so it just flows through the action. And so you kind of get this sense of your eyes are just following it, and you're not taking a moment to have to interrupt that with your dialogue. And I think it says a lot for it. It's just like in Jimbo, there's a scene where there's literally no sound, like the entire sound in the scene is just off, no background, no noise or anything, and just the exchange of swordplay in it for a moment in dead silence is just swift and poignant, and then picks back up, seamlessly after that as the scene starts to draw to a close. And looked at that a lot with the construction of these 2 issues, and looking at it again and with issue 3, of course, and going forward to try and help it be a very immersive experience.
Because there's different clans now, as far as like the anamorphic. Yeah, at the end of issue 2, we kind of see the monkeys. I guess is that
Right. The Grey Wolf Bandit clan, right?
Yes.
They're a bunch of monkeys, yeah.
okay? Is there anything you could tease out for issue 3 that we're gonna see?
Well, you're going to see a lot of blood and a lot of furious action. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a lot of furious samurai action. Just as the issue 2 closed with Yoshio swearing to take their heads, I would not argue with that man. I would if he says he's going to do something, I would believe him. So, look forward to a lot of very vicious, furious samurai action in issue 3. I think Alexia is going to have a lot of fun with that, especially how she likes to portray when blood splatters are flying from particular sword strikes and spear strikes. She does a remarkable way of making that look organic, and I think that we're going to have a real treat for the eyes with it.
Cool. So what we usually like to do is we'll wrap up with both of you and Alexia. Usually at the end of our show, we always talk about what are we currently reading, is a segment that we always like to do. Basically, it's always we either pick a title or a series that we're currently reading out there in the world. And since both of you are on here, the guests kind of want to know maybe something different that they can pick up. So let's hear maybe a title that either you're reading or a series. Sam, what are you currently reading?
Boston Metaphysical Society by Madeline Holly Rawson. She's absolutely brilliant screenwriter, brilliant comic book writer. She's a fantastic novelist. Basically, anything she puts out, as soon as I find out about it, I try and get a copy and read it. Miskatonic University by Mike Shea is another comic that is actually on my have-to-have list. Anything released by Adam Watson from Darkslinger Comics out in Oregon. He's puts out titles like Ghost Assassin. And then anything that is written by my friend Brian Hawkins. I actually got to interview Brian right before his first comic release, and now he's writing for 2 different companies plus his own. He put out a comic titled Cornrows, which was just beautifully written. He's doing a lot of work for Mad Cave right now, and a few others that I don't know if I'm allowed to mention. I don't know if he has an NDA on those or not. But anything by Brian Hawkins, just because I just absolutely love the man's work. Honestly, he should be writing, Batman and Spider-Man in the same month. That's how good he is. He's tremendous. And then Jimmy Palmiotti, anything that he's putting out. Which this month I don't think I have anything from Jimmy, but then of course also She by Billy Tushy.
Yes, yeah, but Billy's a great guy. He was actually at Garden State Comic Fest, correct?
Yeah, I got to meet him for the first time in person. It was really wild. He actually told me, because we were on their show and we sent them some stuff from issue 1, issue 2, including some of the prints. And he said that his son has actually taken the big prints and framed them and put them in his room. So 47 Furious Tales art is hung in Billy Tushy's house in his son's room, which is wild to have to say out loud.
So speaking of the Comic-Con, real quick, before Alexia, we get to you, and what are you currently reading? Are you guys doing any upcoming conventions to get that out there?
I'm trying to get into a couple of cons here in Lexington. In Lexington, I should say, and then there's another one. I'm seeing what we can do about getting in on Cincinnati. The Cincinnati one is pretty much booked, and the second con in Lexington still has a waiting list because they had their seats from 2020 that they're holding over for it. So, not holding my breath on either of those two. But the Lexicon Tabletop Game Convention, which is actually titled Lexicon Tabletop Game Convention from July 30th to August 1st. I'm looking on setting up a booth there. I am reaching out to some of our local artists, people like Lotus Blair, Jennifer Fraggle D, Phoenix O'Ferry, a couple other folks that we have in our bullpen to see if they want to come along too. And basically what we do in that point is we just kind of collaboratively pool cash for a larger booth and then get everyone there in prime real estate for cons. And we use that to kind of leverage position a little bit, you know? And
yeah, I've seen that at definitely at bigger shows. Instead of having an artist just have this small little like 6-foot table, have a bigger presence, like you said, and have a couple artists, a couple writers all together. I've seen that at the New York Comic Con, C2E2, wherever, Baltimore. But that's really the way to go.
Yeah, we're trying to get them at least 8 feet each, you know, as we're trying.
Awesome. So, Alexia, what are you currently reading?
Currently, I'm reading a copy of Blade of the Immortal Omnibus Volume 1 that my dear friend Paul Walcott lent me. So I just started reading that, and you know, it's right up my alley because it's samurai stuff. So he knows me so well. Other than that, a brand new series that is put up by Image that I'm currently reading that I'm really into called Carmen with a K, not a C, with a K. And I do believe that was originally published in Europe. Now, like I said before, I'm from Europe, so I've read a good number of European comics alongside the American comics. So I got immediate just European vibes from this book by Guillaume March, which I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that properly.
It's okay. We butcher names all the time on this podcast.
So right now they're on issue 4 of that. Like I said, it's brand new. I just literally picked it up on a whim. I saw it on the shelves of Dewey's, and I was just like, oh, this looks interesting. And I opened it up, and it was just this beautiful panoramic view of this city in Mallorca. And this girl was completely naked and just floating through it. And it's a very interesting story. And the art looks really, really good. But like I said, it's got some real European vibes to it. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely check out Carmen.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm a big fan of I say Gilliam. Maybe that's Gilliam Marsh. I was a big fan when he did Gotham City Sirens back in the early 2000s in DC Comics. So he's a great guy too.
That. I didn't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Before the New 52 in the early 2000s,
Yeah,
he was doing all the covers and the interiors, and I loved his stuff for that. So I know of the series, but you know, on your recommendation, I will definitely check out the first couple issues. So thank you so much. So to wrap up everything, we really appreciate Alexia and Sam coming on here from Sinopa Publishing. Anything you guys want to promote, now's the time. Get it out there. Tell people where they can find you and where they can back that Kickstarter.
Sure. Well, I want to give a huge shout out to Alexia, to Nick, and to my daughter Willow, all of whom had birthdays this week. So for all your audience members, if you want to do something really great for Alex and for Nick, definitely come out and check Dungeons and Things. These folks did fantastic work on the illustrations. And if you're a D&D fan, come to Drive Through RPG, and you can get copies of any of our Sinopa role-playing game books. And you'll see some familiar names on those titles for art, such as Alexia Veldhuisen, Christian Martinez, Nick Capone, and more. And pride ourselves on our original art and on taking good care of our artists. And we are celebrating the fact that Alexia has now been working full-time as an artist for almost a year. So we've kept her very, very busy, and we'd like to keep doing that. So everyone's contributions on the Kickstarters is what really makes that possible.
It's awesome.
And Alexia, any closing words from you?
You know, I am most active on Instagram You can check me out under the alias Lexa Musa. So that's Lex A Moose A. And yeah, again, guys, if you like RPG stuff, you like high fantasy, and you love sexy ladies, I mean, who doesn't? Come on, let's be real. Check out Dungeons and Dames on Kickstarter.
Yeah, definitely anybody out there. It's really cool. Like I said, I backed it. Zach and I are big fans of the whole Elder Scrolls Skyrim area. So I'm enjoying it. And for 47 Furious Tales, again, the first 2 issues are out. Make sure you guys check out Indiegogo or the drive-through to be able to find those. Again, we really appreciate, Sam, you coming on here with Alexia. I'm sure I'll run into you guys at another show anytime you guys, and if you ever want to come on here, promote it again, right before 47 Furious Tales comes out for issue 3 on the Kickstarter, you're more than welcome. We'll absolutely love to have you guys back on here on the Comic-Con podcast.
Oh, would love to be there. Love to actually just give you a little sneak peek sometime of the cover art for issue 3, but you have it in your hand.
Amazing.
You have it in your hand, actually, with your card right there. That's our cover for issue 3.
Yes.
So I know the audience can't appreciate that, but that's actually what you're going to see is our fierce little samurais in action.
All right, cool. Well, again, we thank you so much for coming here on the Comic-Con podcast, and we'll check you at another time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Take care.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Well, we want to thank everybody who listened to both Alexia and Sam here on the Sinopa Publishing. Thank you guys so much out there for coming on to the show and talking about all the stuff that they have going on with the publishing company. All their links will be in the description. We will definitely be tagging them on our post on Instagram. A lot of good stuff, right, Zach?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, obviously we talk a lot about the big 2, Marvel, DC, and obviously Boom and Image and Dark Horse and all that as well. So it's fun to kind of talk about, some of the more independent stuff, like the real independent stuff. And it's nice, dude. It's nice to hear about, Sam listed off titles that I'd never heard of in my life. You know what I mean? But it made me, then it kind of pissed me off because I'm like, damn, there's all this shit out there I haven't read. Cause me, I kind of got to read everything. So now I'm like, okay, am I going to fall down this hole of Kickstarter comic books and just devour everything? Kind of seems like maybe I should.
And that's the one thing with going to Comic-Cons. You just walk through Artist Alley,
right?
Or you're just walking around on the showroom floor. And if it's not a vendor who's trying to sell comics, at a booth, like a shop or something, that's what it is. It could be a publishing company, and they're, you just kind of walking by, and that's what it was with Sam and Alexia. I saw them at Garden State Comic Fest. And just, I was kind of hooked on the 47 Furious Tales when Sam was telling me about it. So, that's what it is. There's tons of stuff that's out there for people. So when you're walking around a convention, definitely, go to these publishers, go to these artists, these writers, because they have great titles that I'm sure nobody's ever heard about. And it may not come out, but the best way is Kickstarter. You back these projects for these people.
For sure.
So since we've kind of done a really long episode, we again with Sam and Alexia, we're kind of just gonna wrap up this evening with a great review real quick. So DC Titans season 3 trailer just dropped today. Really awesome.
Oh man,
coming out in August on HBO Max. Zach, what did you think about the trailer?
So we've known a lot coming out. We knew we were going to get some Red Hood, but the big question has always been like, how much Joker are we going to get? How true is it going to be to the story of Red Hood?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like we're getting, I don't know about how much. I guess the view we got of the Joker was very much like shadowed, and at a distance. I don't know if we'll get much close up or whatnot, but we're getting some Joker and we're getting some real Jason Todd Red Hood stuff. And man, it looked awesome.
Yeah. So we're going back to Gotham because that's what, Dick says.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, this place has brought monsters. So we're definitely going back to Gotham City. We're getting at a Titans Tower out in San Francisco where season 2 was. A lot of stuff looks like it's going to happen. We also do know that, we're going to be seeing Oracle this season and Scarecrow. Yep. So with them going back to Gotham, Scarecrow is definitely going to be playing a big part, I assume.
We got some spoilers too. Some like confirmation that Donna Troy is going to be back.
Yeah,
and some stills and images of her standing with the team, which I thought's awesome. I love the chick, who plays Donna Troy. I think she's amazing. And And I was really bummed the way season 2 ended with her, So that's awesome. She's coming back.
Yeah, so I was a huge fan of when they showed off Jason Todd, when he was in the beginning of that trailer, and then you very quickly see him with the hood on. I think it's done right. I think the season's going to be great. I cannot wait for August on HBO Max. It's just going to be so and I was looking at CGC 9.8s for the first appearance of Jason Todd, and they're like 1,500. And I have a 9.6, and I'm just like, man, I really got to get this in a 9.8 because I have all his other appearances. I have him first Red Hood in a 9.8. I have like him in the Robin costume in 9.8. And I'm just like, man, I don't have his first true appearance in the 9.8. I'm like, my God, I really need this book. So
you better get it before you get priced out. And the way things go these days, so it doesn't take long. So
it's definitely rough. So other than that, what do we end always the show with? What are we currently reading?
Yep. Yeah.
We got to hear what Alexia and Sam is currently reading, which was really nice, right, Zach?
Yeah, that was fun. It's fun to hear other people's kind of what they're reading, because like you said, you and I always kind of know what each other's reading. So it's fun to get good things. I wrote down a little list as well of some of the suggestions they gave to go look up. So
yeah, Sam's going to send me on our Instagram a list of all these titles, which I definitely need to check out. So, and I'm going to check out Alexia's with Karma. I knew of that title, and I picture it every month when I go into the comic shops and I can see it. I just never picked it up, and I don't know why. But I'm definitely going to pick it up on her recommendation. So for my pick of the week, this week is a book that has finally come to a close. Venom number 35 or Venom 200 for legacy numbers. Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman putting a fork in their series. It was awesome. It was the first time I felt like a title ended with a great closure, and it needed nothing more. I feel like this issue was better than all of King and Black.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I know you read it. There's a lot of things that I don't really want to give any spoilers to anybody who hasn't read the book yet, but we know that Al Ewing is coming in as a writer for a new Venom 1. We talked about it, I guess last week or the week before on the podcast, of how it's going to be some of Venom, Eddie Brock, and some of Flash Thompson. Of course, this issue does have a little bit of Flash Thompson in there, so that's not too much of a spoiler, but I'm not going to spoil the story itself. The only really thing that's amazing, and Zack will attain to this, is when the whole, now that Eddie Brock is part of the God of the Symbiotes, the fact that he can be anywhere at any time is awesome. So there's a part where you see Venom kind of in space helping people out. Then you see him with the Avengers. You see him with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but he's really not there. It's just the symbiote. And he's really back in, I guess we'll call it New York, and he's hanging out with Peter Parker, Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Really interesting. And my favorite, who's still in there, and I even questioned this before I read it, I was hoping Sleeper was still there.
Yeah,
he's still roaming around, and
Sleeper's cool, man.
I'm still a big fan of Sleeper. I think he's gonna bond to somebody, and I think he's gonna be a sleeper hit.
Yeah. No, it was good. I enjoyed that issue too. And you're right. It did kind of round it all out. It brought in, what loose ends there were, it brought them back up. It's always frustrating to read a title and feel like, it starts off really good, the middle's really good or something. By the end, it doesn't feel like the complete story. And I do feel like, say what you will, obviously a lot of people like Donny Cates. I'm a fan of Donny Cates' writing for the most part. But it felt like he had this ending more or less in mind when he started, maybe he didn't know where it was going to go, but it definitely feels like it rounded out the complete story. And I appreciate that as a reader, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you definitely need to read the entire series. Even if you don't read too much of King and Black, if you just read the 1 to 35, there's little, you wouldn't understand certain things.
Right.
So you really need to sit and I may even go back and now reread the entire series, because I was a fan from when it first started. And then I feel like it kind of trickled off. I thought it was getting way too out there. But coming to this close was perfect. I think it was a great send off for Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman to end it at issue 200 legacy numbers. And then of course, at the end of the issue, you see all 200 issues, the
It's always
gallery of all the Venom stuff. So that was what I'm currently reading this week. Zach, what are you currently reading this week?
So I'm gonna keep up with the trend of overpowered heroes from the Marvel universe. So I mean, that was like one of the, I guess, kind of, it's cool and like a downer as well about the Venom issue is like now he's just, what does he call himself? Omnipresent, not omnipotent, but omnipresent, but massively powered. I mean, OP powered now, it seems like, with Venom. So following that train, I'm going to go into my favorite characters, obviously the X-Men. We have the X-Men Gala going on right now. And this issue, we had our planet-sized X-Men #1. So kind of a standalone one-shot that's dealing with the Gala, but it's been hyped up leading up to this as to be one of the most important issues in X-Men history, modern history, moving forward with the X-Men. And I'm be honest, it doesn't disappoint. There's some big things that happen in this issue. I guess I'm going to avoid spoiling it. I will touch on a part of it in terms of the OP is you basically see about 10 or so, maybe more. This is an exact number. Omega level mutants come forward, team up, and do some crazy shit. Like, I mean, just stuff that should be very frightening to the rest of the Marvel universe. I mean, it puts them on par with the biggest threats in the Marvel universe. If they can do things like this when they team up. And it's so interesting in this era of the X-Men too, because this isn't all X-Men. These are villains as well. So all the mutants teamed up together, putting aside their differences and working together for like one thing. That's a big deal, man. I mean, it should be frightening for the Marvel universe. They might just now be the biggest superpower in the Marvel universe if they continue to do stuff like this. So big issue for the X-Men, planet-sized X-Men #1. Check it out. If you're an X-Men fan, of course, I'm sure you'll be reading it. If you're not, I suggest checking it out. It's really, really cool. You might be confused if you haven't been following the X-Men Hickman universe, but man, wild issue. So,
cool. So yeah, that was, I definitely want to check it out now that you're talking about this giant
dude.
I got to check it out. I don't want to talk about it here on the podcast. I'm definitely have to go out and buy it.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for checking out. Episode 24 is in the books. Again, check out Sinopa Publishing, Sam Quinton and Alexia Veldhuisen as the artist. That's all that I have. It's been an absolute pleasure this evening. You could follow us on our Instagram, of course, the Comic-Con Podcast. Send us DMs or email us at the Comic-Con Podcast at gmail.com to hurry up for episode 25. Damn, we're hitting a quarter century, man.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. So that's it for me. Zach, closing words? No,
great episode. Always love interviewing new people, talking about new comics and just kind of opening up that world away from the stuff that we all know, the Marvel DC. So it's fun to get to some new stuff. So really enjoyed speaking with the people from Sinopa Publishing, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Peace out, everybody.
Later.